Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Last time I talked about how long it takes to learn piano. In that video, I defined what it means to learn the piano and concluded that on average, it takes about 7 years to learn the piano enough to play for at least comfortably. Oh shoot, I just spoiled my own video. But there's a reasoning behind it and there's a lot more information, so please watch that video if you haven't watched it. Anyway, in that video, I also said 7 years is just an average and some people take a lot longer and some people take a lot shorter. And nobody wants to start the piano lesson thinking that I'm gonna take as much time as I want. No, you wanna get there as quickly as you want. So today, I'm sharing 3 tips that'll accelerate your learning process. These tips comes from my experience of teaching piano for the last over a decade and observing some of the fast learners. Oh my gosh, it's been well over a decade since I started teaching. Time flies. Before I start, as always, I want to say a huge thank you to my patrons on patreon.com and YouTube members. Unlike popular belief, I really don't get paid that much from YouTube. Instead, it's been these generous people who believes in me enough to pay money for it that keeps me going. So if you're kind enough to support me for $3 or $10 per month, I'll leave a link to my Patreon page in the description. You can also support me directly from YouTube from right here. Alright, let's start. So tip number 1. Show up to your lesson. I know this sounds ridiculous, but getting into a teacher's schedule and paying your tuition doesn't make you a better pianist. You actually have to show up, otherwise I can't teach. I understand life happens and there are schedule conflicts from time to time. In that case, you should communicate with your teacher as early as possible so you have a better chance of rescheduling that lesson. Staying organized and being committed to your lesson, it really goes a long way. And that includes summertime. Now, this is a very big topic, especially in America, where you have 2.5 months of summer break from school. Now, I'm not here to argue if it's a good thing or not, but imagine this. When I was a student in Japan, we had only a month of summer break, maybe a month and 2 weeks at the most. And even during that shorter summer break, we didn't have time off from piano. Even if the school's off, the life goes on, the piano goes on. That's how I grew up. So compared to that, if you take 2.5 months off from piano lessons out of only 12 months a year, that's over 1/6 of your time being spent not taking lessons. Again, I'm not saying a long summer break from school is a bad thing. And being able to plan a long trip with your family is such a privilege in America. And our studio allows to take time off as much as they want during July and August if the student chooses to. However, musically speaking, 2 months of not taking lessons is way too long. Even a month is too long, and when we close our studio for a month so that we can see our family in Japan, I feel bad. But what can I do? My family's in Japan. It takes long to get there. Now let's think about this for a moment. Say you take 2 months off from your piano lesson each year, and you take 6 years of piano lessons. That means you will miss a whole year worth of lesson compared to other people who's been taking lessons throughout the summer. And that's already 1 year shaved off from that 7-year average. My suggestion for the summer break for all music students, and this is what I tell everybody in our studio, is that go ahead and plan your family trip, whatever you want to do during the summer, but while you're at home, continue your piano studies. 2 months is way too long to take a complete break from the piano. It's not even a break, it's like quitting for the big chunk of the year. And from my experience of teaching, students who keep coming during the summer make such a huge progress because they don't have school, they can practice more, they can focus more. Summer is really a good time for piano lessons. Whereas majority of students who takes complete break from the piano, they actually forget some of the things you learned before, so you get more damage than just 2 months of not practicing. You kind of go back a little bit. So we have to make it up first and then start making progress again once the school year starts. So that was the first tip. Show up to your lesson. Make sure you organize your schedule so that you can commit to weekly lessons and take as many lessons as possible during the summer as well. And the tip number 2, ask questions. Now, we as a teacher, We try to remember how it was to learn certain things, and we'll try to imagine what kind of questions you have and try to answer ahead of time. But we're not you. We can't pinpoint what exactly you don't understand unless you ask us. And this is one of the things I advise in this video about choosing the right teacher. Your teacher should be accessible, meaning you should be able to ask questions without hesitating. If your teacher intimidates too much and can't ask the question, and if you're going home and Googling what the teacher said earlier, then that might not be the best learning environment for you. There's no stupid questions. There's no such a question that's too basic and too embarrassed to ask about. Because you're coming to the lesson to learn, and we're here to teach. Of course you don't know as much as we do. If you did, you don't need the lessons. And as a teacher, it's our job to answer your questions. It's more important for us to answer your questions than explaining what we want to teach you. Please don't hesitate to ask any question. There's one time I was teaching this Christmas song to a child, and that child all of a sudden asks me, "Is Santa real?" Wow, that was a really difficult question to ask. I wasn't expecting at all. But I even loved that question. That was such a memorable moment. Please let me know in the comment section how you would have answered that question. But I still remember that child's innocent look when he asked that question. Alright, tip number 3. Practice the way you are instructed. Everybody knows how important it is to practice every day, and all of my students do make their effort to practice regularly. However, the way you practice is very, very important as well. And that's what we teach in the lesson. The whole point of the lesson is so that you can get a professional advice on how you practice. So you can cut all the trial and errors from learning piano so that you can get to the high level as fast as you can. Anybody can practice the piano on their own and learn it to a certain point. But it takes such a long time because you're not necessarily practicing in the best way. We piano teachers, from our own experience of learning and also from teaching many different kinds of students, we know what usually works. And those advice I give to my students are what I think is the best way to master certain things that they need to learn at that point. As I said, everybody's learning style is different. So if you take my advice and practice in a certain way and come back next week, and if it's not working, then I can tweak it. Or I can give you a completely different way of practicing and see if that works. But if you don't try, if you don't even do what I told you to do to begin with, then we have nothing to work with. For example, if I ask a student to use a metronome and write a specific instruction with certain tempo, and next week, same problem happens. So I ask the student, okay, did you use a metronome? And if you have to think, did I use a metronome? Then you didn't use a metronome. Because if you use the metronome every day, every time to practice, you will remember. You don't have to think to answer. If I ask a student to count out loud and play the music, and if the student is having the same random rhythm problem next week, then I'm gonna ask, did you count out loud? And if you have to think about it, then you didn't. Counting out loud most likely fixes all the rhythmic issues, but there are occasions where a student is counting wrong or the counting itself is not stable. So if you try to count out loud for a week and then come back and then do that in front of me, then I can tell what went wrong during that practice. Most of my advice usually works, but even if it doesn't work, once you practice the way I asked you to, then I can tweak that. So please take your teacher's advice. And even if you don't think that's gonna work, just try doing it. If you did what your teacher told you to do and if it didn't work, it'll be our fault. But if you don't do what we told you to do, it's gonna be your fault. It's like going to a doctor and you get the medicine and don't take it and come back next week and say, hey, I still don't feel well. That's your full week being wasted. I know everybody who's watching this video is practicing hard, and I want you to get the most out of that practice session each and every time so you can make faster progress. In order to do that, make sure you take your teacher's advice and actually practice that way. I had several parents who comes to the lesson every week and take notes for the kids. That's totally fine. Sometimes for younger students, You need that. You can't expect like 6-year-old to take a mental note of everything. I try my best to write most important instructions on students' books. But there are things that I could probably have written more because I'm teaching and listening to the students and trying to write at the same time in a limited time. So if you can be that second person who takes all the notes and then take it home and remind the kid, I think that's a great idea. I even had some parents who records the lesson every time they bring their camcorder, and with my permission, of course. And I'm totally fine with that as long as they don't put it out on the internet. For their own purpose of reviewing the lessons, go ahead and record. I have nothing to hide. I appreciate that much involvement from the parents. And those students are practicing the way I told them. Parents are looking at the notes and recordings and advising the students at home to practice the way I told them to. And those students really make progress because they fix all the problems within a week. Now they're on their way to the next piece. So to sum up, first, show up to your lessons, taking regular lessons as much as possible throughout the year is very important in your progress. And during your lessons, ask questions. Don't leave anything in doubt. Google won't answer everything. It is our job to make sure all the concepts and skills are clearly communicated. And if we fail to do so, please tell us. We can't read your mind. I need you to tell me what you don't understand so I can teach more effectively. You have to help us here. And lastly, actually practice the way you're instructed. Even if you are in doubt, try it. And if it doesn't work, show us that it didn't work. That way, we'll learn your learning style and tweak our lesson plans in the future. From my everyday teaching for the last over a decade, students who take regular lessons and ask questions and take our advice seriously makes the most progress. And they're the ones who can shorten that 7-year average into 6, 5, 4, even 3 years to get to the point where you can control this instrument enough to play something famous. And at that point, that's where your piano studies gets really, really fun because you feel in control of the instrument and everything we do is a concert repertoire you can actually perform and everybody knows. And you can confidently say, yes, I can play the piano. All right, that's it for today. These may be so obvious, but a lot of people fail to do these fundamental things and they don't even notice it. So I thought it was worth making the video about it. If this was helpful, please hit the like button so YouTube will know this is good content and it'll start spreading to other people. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification so you won't miss my future videos. Questions and comments are always welcome. I'm always looking forward to reading everybody's comment and try to answer as much as possible. If you're interested in one-on-one session for consultation or lessons, I'll leave the link to my online studio where you can make appointments. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.